models are wrong, but some are sometimes useful. The trick is not trying to find the useful model because that is too difficult or complex, but to use the process of elimination to get rid of things that are clearly wrong, and what we're left with will have a much higher probability of being the correct model. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ashton Mozano. I join you from San Diego, California. It is absolutely my privilege and honor to be with you. My challenge is going to be to condense my 3 decades of working with AI, ML, operations research, and data mining, and actuarial sciences into the next 19 minutes. But we'll get it done. So I have seen many AI winters and springs come and go. And I'm not going to stand on the stage here and try to predict the future. If anyone does that, they're probably either charlatan or delusional. But what I can tell you is, if it can take these formerly distinct disciplines of AI, ML, and data mining, and operations research, and actuarial sciences, and so forth, but somebody at some point put them all into a blender, and they created this AI smoothie that we've all been consuming now. If you were to look at the patterns of what would be successful in the future based on historic patterns of what failed or was succeeded in similar industries in the past, I think we can learn a lot. And then that would help us predict what the future may hold and anticipate all the challenges that we're going to get around. So if I were to condense my talk today into just very basic 3 blocks, it would be decisions, data, and platforms in particular. And the title of the talk, Technology Intelligence 3.0, is given homage to the book Life 3.0 that was published a few years ago. Many of you may have read it. It's a non-science fiction book about the impact of AI in society. So let's look at, let's try to grab a spiral out of history that may give us some insight in terms of how do we go forward on this whole new exciting realm of Gen AI, right? We're standing on a platform. The Gen AI trains are passing by at very high speed, and we have the fear of missing out on one of those trains. But I'm going to suggest that the fear of getting on the wrong train and going off the cliff should be equally important. So let's talk about an industry that many years ago also focused on a very important revolutionary automation, just like AI and IA intend to do. In 1769, if my research is correct, the very first machine that could transport humans safely and could be mass-produced was created, something that we know as a vehicle, as an automobile. And it was powered by steam engines. From 1820 through 1884, electrical vehicles were experimented on. And in 1884, the very first mass-producible automobile was created. It was an EV. A year later, Carl Benz, in 1885, unveiled his internal combustion engine. Now, for these decades that I mentioned, as far as we know, there were hundreds of companies, think of them as startups, that were trying to capture this exciting automation revolution. Most of them, they don't even have an entry. Nobody can even find records about who they were or what they did. They don't exist. Because they bet on the wrong technology. They were trying to build better steam engines for the cars or maybe better EVs. In 1908, Henry Ford's Model T decidedly killed off all the other technologies because he showed how it could mass produce internal combustion engine vehicles that nobody else could keep up with. These are very important lessons learned. And if we were to take those few hundred startups at a time and bring them forward to this modern day, you can think of these thousands of startups that are also trying to decide what technology to use to power their next generation of automation. Okay? So, before we get into the what, when I give these talks, people usually want me to get into what technology do you use, what libraries should I use, what algorithms are we using? Well, that's the what, right? And then the how all depends on how a particular group or company is going to implement those pieces of technology and what to do with it. But before we go to any of that, we need to understand the why. We're all here because every one of you is part of a company or group or organization that focuses on innovation. So it's really important to know what kind of an innovation we're focusing on. Are you doing sustaining innovation, or are you a disruptor? Key differences, and your focus has to be different. So I created a kind of a simplified heuristic in trying to decide which one you may belong to. If you're focusing on well-established premium types of clientele and customers, if your objective is to retain your customer base and just keep growing, and if your focus from a strategic level is on prestige and profits and premium features, you probably are part of the sustaining innovation group. On the other side, if you are catering to the long tail of demand, you're focusing on the underserved customer base, you're producing products that are cost effective, they're convenient, but they're not polished. The core functionality, they may be imperfect, but they work well enough. And you're trying to gain a foothold, and you're trying to increase adoption. In those scenarios, you probably belong to the disruptive innovation category. And good disruptors who do disrupt eventually become the established big market share companies that then have to switch over to sustaining innovation. And if you're not part of any of those two groups, you're probably part of the Me Too category. And the Me Too category is actually simpler, because the Me Too category, all they have to do is follow what their model is doing and follow the exact same things with a bit of a delay. And if their model entity succeeds, then you succeed. If they fail, you fail. In order for us to understand, though, how to invest and where to divest, we have to know how to manage our risk. We don't have time to get into this, but my LinkedIn profile was made available. I have an article written on this methodology that I came up with some years ago that I call PAUSE. And before you select a particular piece of technology or tool that is supposed to be enterprise grade, don't just do something, pause. And it's a fairly simple set of metrics to help you eliminate the wrong choices, and what you're left with should hopefully be the right choice. And furthermore, in order to know where to invest and how to invest, you're essentially doing decision analysis, right? And decision analysis, the way I have constructed it, has 3 legs to a stool. Leg 1 is, what is the total cost of ownership of this particular trend or product or capability that you're investing in? Total cost of ownership doesn't mean CapEx and OpEx and some fancy spreadsheets that are focusing in the kind of a shorter term. Total cost of ownership means opportunity cost, reputation cost, the total cost, the second and third order effects of that particular investment. And once you have invested in this new capability or technology or whatever it is, how fast do you expect it to prove value? That's time to value. And when you have those two figured out, then you can calculate your return on investment, right? Which is the order of magnitude in the length of time at which whatever you invested in is going to bear fruit and you can reap the benefits. If any of those legs are not solid, the stool wobbles and it falls over with dire consequences. Following this also helps you to avoid the very common sunk cost fallacy, that we have invested so much, therefore we've got to keep going down that path, right? And however, once you perfect that system, that construct, then you can create this manufacturing of these stools, provide this decision analytical capability for any industry. You can apply it across the board, whether you're serving manufacturing, finance, healthcare, education, government, doesn't matter. It's applicable across the board. Now, in order to have this decision analytical framework, I would say the 2 key pieces that are important today, that you should focus on today, the model that's useful today, is around democratization of data and automation. Now, some may not know the difference between AI and IA. IA, intelligent automation, is mostly referring to things like digital transformation through workflows, robotic process automation, and so on and so forth. Basically looking at the repetitive patterns that are manual or repetitive and try to automate them so that the human experts can focus on the things that humans are good at, which is creativity, problem solving, and so on and so forth. And AI is AI. And these require good data. And good data has to come through some sort of a platform system that helps collect, curate, and give it out. So we need good data. So we need a platform that can intelligently collect data so that we can get intelligence out of that data. So let's just call that the data intelligence platform. By the way, what is good data versus bad data? Many of you have heard of GIGO. GIGO doesn't just mean garbage in, garbage out. If you have 99% pure gold and add 1% highly radioactive plutonium to the mix, the entire output is poisoned. It's 100% garbage out. And that's exactly the type of thing that can happen and will happen in a lot of advanced technologies. Now, I may not have time to talk about this, but I will, if I have time at the end, talk about my cybersecurity journey with the AI world and how we would focus on poisoning these models back in the day when these very fancy AI-powered, ML-powered, deep learning-powered cybersecurity products would come out and advertise. And some of the efforts I was involved with and my colleagues were involved with basically proved none of those would work, so that the vendors stopped using those terms for a while. They went away. There was a time where you would go to RSA and all you would see is powered by deep learning, AI, ML. And then those terms disappeared, and now they're making a comeback, powered by Gen AI, right? So let's talk a little bit now about the particular system that today can help democratize your data access and your AI access. And by the way, what does it mean to democratize something? Basically means enabling those who should be entitled to have access to that thing be actually able to access it. So do not bar access to data or automation due to bad choices, business choices, or due to tech debt, right? And when I joined Flexera about 2 years ago, we were on a very exciting journey to bring that data intelligence platform in our realm of focus, which is enterprise IT asset management and IT visibility and a system of insight as a whole. And I wanted to make sure that we have the best-in-class tooling to help us get there to balance the legs of the stool, the best total cost of ownership, the best time to value, the best ROI. Again, all models are wrong, but I was looking for the right model for our scenarios, for our use cases in that point in time. So I started with 214 of data-related technologies that existed 2 years ago that passed the pause criteria. And I took a handful of our best and brightest architects with me. We did a 3-phase approach. 214 got reduced to a few dozen got reduced to half a dozen. And Databricks ended up in the top 6. And then we did POCs and prototypes and a lot of deep dive with the vendors. And it came on top and all the criteria that we cared for. And the things that were really important to us was we don't want to have vendor lock-in. We want to have a non-proprietary, non-black box system, most of which is open source by Apache and Linux Foundation. We wanted to have the technology that focuses on simplifying things, not creating more complications, reducing complexity by taking the alternatives in and putting them together and combining them, and allowing us to have some degree of confidence in future-proofing. And 2 weeks ago, I was at the Databricks Data and AI Summit, and I was extremely happy about the choice we made because that's exactly what happened. They have open source almost the entirety of the ecosystem, and all of those also have been now converged. So now I don't have to worry about, do we use Iceberg, do we use Delta Lake, or hoodie? Do we use Avro or Parquet or Oric or CSV? No, we're going to use uniform. Everything else is abstracted away from us. That helped us democratize data access and AI, because now bringing in LLMs and SLMs and creating our own and managing them, it's just a simple bringing things in and clicking buttons. 2 years ago, if I were to deploy the LLMs that I had on my laptop, I had to worry about who's going to do the DevOps on this, who's going to do the ops. It's one thing when it works on your laptop, but in an enterprise setting, it worked on my laptop, and it's not a good excuse. This thing needs to be in production. Thousands of users need to be able to access it safely, securely, reliably. So if you're just doing, your data scientists that are doing all this great work, that's wonderful. How is that actually going to transition into something in production that's safe and sound and reliable? Because if you get that wrong, that's your reputation hit. That's your total cost of ownership taking a hit. That's your opportunity coming into play. Very significant. Today we don't have that problem. And then the other thing that was really compelling to me is every organization starts with the best intentions in architecture and design, but ends up with services favelas. I don't care if you're enterprise or medium-sized business or a startup, you will have these services favelas that feed into or feed from your data swamps and data puddles and data black holes. And it's extremely unrealistic to think that it can come in and somehow magically refactor all of these and create something clean and modern. That just doesn't happen. So I was looking for a technology that allows us to bring this modern metropolis-grade apartment complex and put it on top of the favelas so we can keep building cadence on top. And in the meantime, we can start converting those pieces that we're not happy with and basically dismantle the favelas and safely take the residents and put them into the flats. That's the concept. Many times people would ask me, how do you change the engines on an airplane that's flying full of customers and cargo without crashing it or having it to land? And I said, well, to me, the answer is simple. Find a flying aircraft carrier. In fact, there was a DARPA project over a decade ago that was trying to do something like that, and then Marvel series, you see these flying aircraft carriers. Find one of those that's going in the same direction as you are, land your airplane there, and then safely and methodically upgrade the engines, and then you fly up better and faster than before. To me, this technology was that. Right? And it's all thanks to the bring your own persistence layer that allows you to transition from the stacks, for those of you who may have seen the movie Ready Player One, to the Metropolis model. And then from that, you just keep adding the things you need. If you need low-code, no-code workflow automation, drag and drop types of capabilities, the capabilities for that you can bring in. You need BI, you can easily integrate with the best-in-class, whatever works for you. You want modern SaaS-based APIs, it's also there. So that makes life really easy. Then, last but not least, I usually get asked about what do I personally use, in my day-to-day. I don't like complexity. To me, complexity is the antithesis to innovation. I like things simple. And the simple tools that I use are the following that I would recommend. About a year ago, I canceled all of my subscriptions to every single Gen AI-based system out there. I had most of them for over a year, and it was unmanageable. All of those models were wrong, but some were sometimes useful, and it was just too much complexity to go log into a whole bunch of different things. And yes, you can use, I could have created my own LangChain, kind of a construct, and go and try to stitch them all together, create an expert system, but why? It's too much work. So I found this one particular product, Backplane. It has 18 or even more of the best-in-class LLMs that I would ever use, like Claude and GPT, 4.0 and so on and so forth. Gemini Advanced and everything else. I put the prompt in, and it runs in against all of these, and then I can compare the answers. And most of the time, only one or two are right and useful. The rest are throwaways, especially if I use it to write code or try to do something that's a little bit technical or requires factuality, right? A lot of these LLMs are not very good factuality, for factual stuff. And then I realized that if there was something that wasn't there, like I wanted the Databricks as a DBRX, I just put a request in, and the team's usually very responsive, and they add it in quickly. Then most of the time, for those of you who are working on the terminal, you want to have an intelligent tool so you don't have to memorize commands and have to put them in. And Warp is my tool. And also like my IDE to be very bare-bone and fast. I'm a big fan of the Rust programming language and ecosystem that's been developing and growing every day. And I want something that I can add things to, make sure it works very well, it's safe, it's fast, and so that's what I use.